Hey y'all, I'm James Roy, and this is a new series I'm starting up called Amateur Astros Analysis. And that is because while I am a huge fan of the Astros and like to think I know at least a little bit about baseball, I would say in the grander scheme of my Houston sports that baseball is not my strongest point of analysis. So coming from an amateur standpoint, this is me talking about the team I love, the Astros. So today I'm going to explain my fandom. We'll talk about the catcher dilemma. We'll talk about what to do with Abreu and the ups and downs and injury woes that the Astros have faced throughout the first part of this season. You are talking to an Astros fan that was raised on the brick red and pinstripe era. Really, the first full season of Astros baseball that I followed was 2005. All the way through, early part of the season. The understanding that the Astros always start slow was something that was really ingrained in my brain during that particular season. It honestly led me to some unrealistic optimism in the years between. But from that era, or from that standpoint, I guess you have to understand that pretty much a lot of what happened to the Astros before the Killer Bees, specific players outside of Nolan Ryan, are not my strong suit. I recognize names, but I don't particularly have a huge lot of knowledge on Astros history prior to that, specifically. I should say. I didn't really live it, and so it's not my strongest point of knowledge. But onward from there, I mean, I've been in and out of following that closely, mainly due to obligations to my career, but have recently gotten MLB TV and have been able to follow it more closely. Due to Navy stuff, like even the 2017 season, I was able to follow a lot of the games, but I was in and out for a lot of that season due to underways and such. And that's pretty much been the story of my Astros fandom. But I'm excited to talk about the team. So let's talk about the catcher dilemma. The Astros are currently carrying three catchers on the roster. Cesar Salazar, who, honestly, I've seen a lot of people say the third catcher. You've got Yanier Diaz, gives you the flexibility to first, plays catcher, can hit, is what we've been told. He did get a home run here recently, his first home run of the season against the White Sox, so I'll give him that. And then you got Maldonado, the person that either everyone unreasonably defends or loves to hate. There's no real in between. And honestly, I don't know what the right answer is. I love Maldonado. I understand that the fan base has this tendency to get unnecessarily hugely attached to players that we really like. The sentimental value factor is really high for a team that likes to move on from players if they cost too much money. And so personally, I think we've gotten to a point where obviously it doesn't make any sense to keep Salazar on the roster. I don't know what he's doing. He rarely plays. I think mainly it was just between him and Corey Lee, and they wanted to give Corey Lee consistent play time in the minors. He's not a catcher that should sit on a roster and just wait for his time, whereas Salazar, if he sits, it doesn't really affect it one way or another. I love Maldonado. I think that he brings a lot to the table defensively. I think he has more home runs than Yanier Diaz, but he also has a lot more plate appearances. A lot of teams use catcher as kind of like the new pitcher, with universal designated hitter being a thing. But with the opportunity to have a catcher that has shown to play pretty well comparatively to Maldonado, I don't think it's a bad move to maybe shift the workload to 50-50 and see what Diaz does with more playtime. Dusty said at the beginning of the season that he was going to give Diaz more at-bats than he has trended towards so far. And for him to see those at-bats, the playtime needs to go up significantly. We've already seen a trend with him starting Diaz with the younger pitchers that aren't committed to Maldonado as their go-to guy, just to kind of build that trust up. And I think that's a smart move. I think that at some point you have to go, hey, we need Diaz to start more games, and Maldonado needs to kind of be, I don't want to say sunset. I think that, like I said, you move to a 50-50 rotation and you see what happens. And if you find that the value of Diaz's hitting is worth more than what you're getting out of Maldonado's defense, and Diaz's defense is comparable or at least serviceable, I think you could start to shift more in Diaz's direction. What do you do with Abreu? It's not like Abreu is not hitting. He does have some useful hits. It's just, I think the frustrating part, from what I've gathered from Astros Twitter and just from watching the game, is that we were advertised to be getting a guy who is going to step in and hit home runs, a power hitter. We were advertised a power hitter, and he's yet to hit a home run on the year. He's not hitting for any power, and he's actually been less than useful to the offense. Defensively, all right, sure. I hadn't seen him make any severe errors defensively. Neutral at best is what we're getting out of Jose Abreu. Is it a slump? Is it just that time? Is he reached a point in his career where maybe it's time to hang it up? Who knows? I know that Dusty, being the way he is going to continue to give Abreu chance after chance. The other thing that factors into that is who do they replace him with? Hensley, I don't know. There's not like a direct replacement at first base for Abreu. Abreu was signed to be the first baseman for this season. So, and then you look back at the moves that were made prior to that. This was obviously a Jim Crane move before a GM was signed. You look at the fact that Yuli Gurriel was passed on. I think that Yuli has shown in his next location with the Marlins that he is at least still kind of serviceable. But even then, I don't think Gurriel is like an everyday player. So then you go back to the fact of if we had stuck with Gurriel, I don't think that the fan base would remember him as fondly if we were using him as an everyday first baseman. I'd love to be proven wrong. I love Yuli Gurriel, and I would love for him to have stayed on the team and continue to produce at the level that he did. But I mean, last season he dropped off significantly. He showed up in the playoffs. Having that many plate appearances without a strikeout in the postseason was a huge boost to a team that didn't get anything from Altuve and just in general needed help. And the players that did step up every other game or so throughout the playoffs helped make it happen for a pitching staff that was lights out. The offense stepped up when it needed to, and Gurriel was a part of that in the postseason. But I don't necessarily disagree with the move to move on from him. The thing is that I'm asking a lot of questions without answer. I don't know what the answer is at first base. If you deem Jose Abreu to not be the guy, what do you do? Do you put Hensley out there? Do you find someone who's a utility and start them at first base and just see what happens? Like, I don't have the answer to that. I would love to know y'all's answers to that, but I simply don't have it. On top of Abreu just absolutely not being useful in any way at all, ever this entire season, the Astros have faced a lot of injury woes from Chaz going down. Luckily, he's back up. Brantley being ran all the way through his tune-up in the minors just to get back up to the roster in Anaheim. I was at the game that day in Anaheim on that Monday, and then just to be told, oh, hey, he's actually going home. He's not ready, right? His rehabilitation went off the rails. He's out indefinitely. We've got Jose Altuve starting his rehabilitation, and he's doing fine. I think the timeline is late May, early June for Altuve, which is nice. It'll be nice to have him back in the lineup because as good as Dubon has been, soft contact is great. I'd love to see a hitter who can like really just absolutely get after it with all of this, right? Like we have all these players that are injured coming back up, and we have a lot of players we've grown attached to because that's what Astros fans do. So who goes down and who comes back up? I think early in the season, a lot of people would have told you Jake Myers. Jake Myers is going down. There's no way he's out. He's out of it. A lot of people gave up on Jake Myers. Jake has recently turned a new leaf, has played a lot better recently. So then you go, well, can we send Jake Myers down? Him and Chaz are our true center fielders that we have on the roster, starter and backup, cycling back and forth, really just a center field by committee kind of thing. So then who goes down? Hensley's been kind of trash at the plate for a lot of this season. So is it Hensley? Obviously, it's Salazar. I think I mentioned earlier, there's some people that don't even know the name of the third string catcher that were for some reason carrying on the roster. I guess really it's only Altuve coming back since Brantley went down. So with that, I guess you send Salazar down and you bring up Altuve. I'd love to know what y'all think about who's going up and who's going down. And I think the Astros overcome the injury woes. It's not really something that concerns me right now, but if it gets much worse, I'll start to think twice about it maybe. Finally, the bullpen. Now, I mentioned earlier the Astros bullpen, the Astros starting pitching rotation is something that was kind of the cornerstone of the 2022 season. I would say that on top of having a good offense, the bullpen and the starting pitching rotation really kind of carried the Astros a lot of the time and made up for deficiencies in the offense. Now the offense is kind of there, and we're looking to the pitching staff to pick up for it, and we're seeing guys like Montero fall out. Montero can't produce. I don't know if he has, he who shall not be named, going wrong with him in terms of like his mental. I don't know where he's at or why he's suddenly fallen off. A lot of people are really quick to critique the move by Jim Crane to re-sign him for $11 million a year. I think there's a place to find for him in the lineup that maybe lets him be productive, but the eighth inning, isn't it? I don't think that's his place anymore. And honestly, I think he needs a day or two to figure it out because I'm not seeing good things from Montero. Now, the rest of the bullpen, Ryan Presley, 7 for 7 on saves, crushing it right now. And in general, the bullpen is handling themselves, but it's just not at the same level that it was last year. Can it get there? Sure, if Montero figures his stuff out, but I don't know what it's going to take. I don't know what's going on with him. The starting pitching, is IL Central. We've got Urquidy, we got Luis Garcia, both down, and obviously JP France has produced. Belak, sure, he hadn't absolutely sucked. The deeper question is why are we not bringing up Forrest Whitley? We know Luis Garcia is out for the season. We know he's done. Urquidy might come back. His is more of like a wait and see kind of thing. It's not a for sure done thing. So why is it that this pitching prospect that we've been preached to as like the next best thing is still sitting in the minors, still not being called up to have his chance to prove that he can play at the next level? Is there reason to believe that there is enough time that could pass for him to be good, or is the Astros farm system just not believing that he is who they thought he was? That question, to me, I think should be answered by the end of the season. It'd be a shame to go this entire season without knowing what we're going to get out of Forrest Whitley and to watch him continue to just play at that level. There's just a lot of questions surrounding the Astros pitching right now. I don't think it's anything that's concerning me in terms of their ability to make the playoffs this season. I haven't reached panic mode like some fans. I mean, it's one series at a time. The past 2 series have been series wins. As long as you continue in series, you create a gap between how many wins and losses you have. It's very basic. It's very obvious. As someone who is not super all the way knowledgeable on baseball, I can make that connection. So it's just interesting to see how the bullpen has shaped up, and I'm interested to see specifically Forrest Whitley. I just really want to see what do the Astros think of him, and are they going to bring him up? Well, guys, it's been fun talking Astros with you. If you want to find me on social media, I am at M1 Texans fan. If you like the Texans, I host Texans Takes with James Roy. That is also on this YouTube channel, and it's available on Spotify under the Bullpen Podcast Network. And until next time, thanks for listening.